After 32 years together, I learned my wife had affairs with several friends. They please me in ways you never could, she admitted coldly. I just nodded. The next day, she was begging outside my door. I, 54 thought I knew everything about my wife after 32 years together. We met in college, built a life, raised 2 kids who are now adults with families of their own. She was my best friend, my partner, my everything. Until last Tuesday, when my world collapsed in the span of 5 minutes. I came home early from a business trip. The house was quiet, and I figured she was out running errands. I went to our bedroom to change clothes and heard voices from our home office. The door was slightly ajar, and I could see her sitting at the desk, talking on the phone. At first, I thought it was just a normal conversation with one of her friends. Then I heard her laugh. Not her regular laugh, the one I'd fallen in love with decades ago. This was different. Intimate. Seductive. You know exactly what I need, she was saying, her voice low and breathy. He's away until Thursday, so we have plenty of time. My blood turned to ice. I pressed myself against the wall, straining to hear more. Last weekend was incredible. I can't stop thinking about what you did to me. She paused, listening to whoever was on the other end. No, he has no idea. He never pays attention anyway. You please me in ways he never could. The words hit me like physical blows. 32 years of marriage, and she was talking about me like I was some stranger she barely tolerated. I backed away from the door, my heart hammering so hard I was sure she'd hear it. I made it to the kitchen before my legs gave out, and I had to grip the counter to stay upright. My mind was racing, trying to process what I'd just heard. She was having an affair. After everything we'd built together, all the promises we'd made, she was betraying me with someone else. And from the sound of it, this wasn't some recent development. This was established, comfortable, ongoing. I heard her footsteps coming down the hall, so I quickly grabbed a glass of water and tried to look normal. She walked into the kitchen, and for a moment, I saw her through new eyes. She was still beautiful at 52, still the woman I'd married, but now there was something else there. Something I'd been too blind to see. You're home early, she said, not even looking surprised. No guilt, no panic, nothing. Flight got moved up, I managed to say. How was your day? Fine. Quiet. I was just catching up with some friends. She said it so casually, like she hadn't just been planning another rendezvous with her lover. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling while she slept peacefully beside me. I wanted to confront her, to demand answers, but something held me back. Maybe it was cowardice, or maybe it was the lawyer in me knowing I needed more information before making any moves. Over the next few days, I started paying attention to things I'd previously ignored. Her phone habits, her schedule, the way she dressed when she went out with friends. It was all there, hidden in plain sight. I'd just been too trusting, too comfortable in our routine to notice. I hired a private investigator. I know it sounds cliché, but I needed proof. Not just for my own sanity, but because if this was going to end our marriage, I wanted to be prepared for what came next. The investigator's report arrived a week later, and it was worse than I'd imagined. Not one affair, multiple affairs, spanning several years. Some were with men I knew, friends we'd socialized with regularly. Others were strangers she'd met through various activities. The photos and documentation painted a picture of a woman living a completely double life. But the worst part was reading the investigator's notes about her conversations. She'd been recorded talking to one of her lovers about how boring I was, how our marriage was just convenient for her, how she stayed because of financial security but got her real satisfaction elsewhere. He's so predictable, she'd said. Same routine every day, same conversations, same everything. At least with you guys, I feel alive again. I sat in my car in the parking garage of my office building, reading through everything, and I felt something shift inside me. The hurt was still there, but it was being overshadowed by something else. Anger. Cold, calculating anger. She thought I was predictable? She thought I was boring? She thought she could use me as her safety net while she played around with whoever caught her fancy? I started making plans. First, I quietly moved money around. Not enough to raise suspicions, but enough to protect myself. I opened new accounts she didn't know about and started documenting everything. Every asset, every debt, every financial detail of our life together. Then I started gathering more evidence. I installed monitoring software on our home computer and started keeping detailed records of her activities. Every lie she told me, every fake story about where she'd been, Every time she came home smelling like another man's cologne, I documented it all. But I didn't confront her. I kept playing the role of the oblivious husband, the boring, predictable man she thought she'd married. I smiled when she kissed me goodbye before her book club meetings. I asked about her day when she came home from her shopping trips. I even bought her flowers on our anniversary, just like I had every year for the past 3 decades. She had no idea I knew anything. The breaking point came 3 months later. I was supposed to be at a conference in another state, but the event got canceled at the last minute. Instead of calling to tell her I was coming home early, I decided to surprise her. I walked into our house at 2 p.m. on a Thursday and heard sounds coming from our bedroom. Our bedroom. The bed where we'd made love for over 3 decades, where we'd conceived our children, where we'd comforted each other through losses and celebrated victories together. I stood in the hallway and listened to my wife having sex with another man in our bed. The sounds were unmistakable, and they went on for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes. When it was over, I heard them talking. I recognized the voice. It was Mark, one of my oldest friends. Someone who'd been to our house countless times, who'd shared meals at our table, who'd been a groomsman in our wedding. "She's going to be gone all weekend," my wife was saying. "We could have the whole house to ourselves." "What about him?" Mark asked. "What about him? He'll never find out. He's too wrapped up in his own little world to notice anything. Besides, even if he did find out, what's he going to do? He needs me more than I need him." That's when something inside me snapped. Not the explosive kind of anger that makes you do something stupid, the cold, methodical kind that makes you dangerous. I quietly left the house and drove to my office. I called my lawyer and told him I needed to see him immediately. Then I called the private investigator and told him to expedite his final report. By the end of the day, I had a plan. I spent the weekend acting completely normal. I asked about her book club meeting, listened to her elaborate lies about what they'd discussed, even suggested we invite Mark and his wife over for dinner soon. "That sounds nice," she said, not even blinking at the irony. Monday morning, I told her I had to leave town again for work. Another conference, this one definitely happening, and I'd be gone for 4 days. "Have fun," she said, already reaching for her phone before I was even out the door. But I didn't leave town. Instead, I checked into a hotel 20 minutes away and put the final phase of my plan into motion. I had copies of everything: photos, recordings, financial records, the works. I'd already filed for divorce, but the papers wouldn't be served until I was ready. I'd also prepared a little surprise for her and her lovers. See, my wife thought she was so clever, but she'd made one crucial mistake. She'd underestimated me. She thought I was boring and predictable, but what she'd failed to realize was that boring and predictable people often make the best planners. I'd spent months learning about each of her affairs, gathering information not just about her, but about the men she was involved with. Mark was married with teenage kids. Another one of her lovers was engaged to a woman who had no idea what kind of man she was planning to marry. A third was a prominent local businessman who'd built his reputation on being a family man. They all thought they were so smart, sneaking around behind everyone's backs. They had no idea that everything they'd done was documented, recorded, and ready to be shared with the people who mattered most in their lives. Wednesday evening, while she thought I was still out of town, I put everything in motion. The divorce papers were served at 6 p.m., just as she was getting ready for another book club meeting. I know because I was watching from my car across the street when the process server knocked on our door. I saw her face through the window when she opened the envelope. Shock, then panic, then something that looked almost like relief. Maybe she was tired of living a double life too. But that was just the beginning. At exactly 7 p.m., while she was probably calling her lawyer or one of her lovers for support, emails started going out. Mark's wife received a comprehensive package detailing her husband's affair, complete with photos and recordings. The engaged businessman's fiancée got a similar package. The prominent local businessman's information went to his wife, his business partners, and several local news outlets. I didn't send anything malicious or vindictive, just facts. Photos, recordings, dates, times, locations. I let the evidence speak for itself. By 9 p.m., my phone was ringing nonstop. My wife, Mark, several other people whose lives had just been turned upside down. I didn't answer any of the calls. Thursday morning, I checked out of the hotel and drove home. There were 3 cars in my driveway: my wife's, Mark's, and one I didn't recognize. I parked on the street and walked up to the front door. I could hear shouting from inside. Multiple voices, all talking over each other. It sounded like chaos. I used my key to let myself in, and the shouting stopped immediately. My wife was standing in the living room with Mark and another man I recognized from the investigators' photos. They all looked like they'd been hit by a truck. "We need to talk," my wife said, her voice shaking. "No," I said calmly. "We really don't." "You don't understand," Mark started to say. "I understand perfectly," I cut him off. "You've been sleeping with my wife in my house, in my bed, for months. Your wife understands too now. I imagine she's having some interesting conversations with her lawyer right about now." The color drained from his face. "This is insane," the other man said. "You can't just destroy people's lives like this." "I didn't destroy anything," I replied. "I just shared some information. What people do with that information is up to them." My wife stepped forward, and for the first time in months, I saw a real emotion in her eyes. "Fear. Please," she said. "We can work this out. We can go to counseling. We can fix this." "Fix what?" I asked. "The fact that you've been cheating on me for years? The fact that you told your lovers I was boring and predictable? The fact that you said they pleased you in ways I never could?" She flinched like I'd slapped her. "You were listening," she whispered. "I was paying attention," I corrected. Something I apparently should have been doing a long time ago. Mark and the other man left quickly after that, probably to deal with their own domestic disasters. My wife tried to talk to me for another hour, alternating between apologies, excuses, and threats. I listened to it all with the same calm detachment I'd use in a business meeting. When she finally ran out of words, I handed her a copy of the divorce papers. "You have 30 days to move out," I said. "Your lawyer will explain the terms." "You can't do this," she said, but there was no conviction in her voice. "I already have." She left that afternoon, and I haven't seen her since. But I know she's been busy trying to do damage control, calling mutual friends, trying to spin the story in her favor. It's not working. When you have recordings of someone bragging about their affairs, it's hard to claim you're the victim. Update 1. It's been 2 weeks since everything came out, and the fallout has been spectacular. Mark's wife filed for divorce and took the kids to her mother's house. The engaged businessman's fiancée called off the wedding and posted the evidence on social media before blocking him everywhere. The prominent local businessman lost 2 major contracts when his affairs became public knowledge. My wife has been staying with her sister, but apparently that's not going well either. Her sister called me yesterday, not to plead my wife's case, but to apologize for not seeing what kind of person her sister really was. "I always thought you two had the perfect marriage," she said. "I had no idea she was capable of this." The divorce is proceeding smoothly. My lawyer says my wife's attorney is pushing for a quick settlement, which tells me she knows she doesn't have a leg to stand on. The prenup we signed 30 years ago is ironclad, and with the evidence of her affairs, she's not entitled to much. Our kids have been supportive, which surprised me. I was worried they'd blame me for airing the family's dirty laundry so publicly, but they're both adults with marriages of their own. They understand what betrayal looks like. "I'm proud of you, Dad," my daughter told me. "You could have just quietly divorced her, but you made sure everyone knew the truth. That takes courage." My son was more direct. "She made her choices. Now she gets to live with the consequences." Update 2. A month has passed, and my wife showed up at my door yesterday morning. I almost didn't recognize her. She looked like she'd aged 10 years in 30 days. Her hair was unwashed, her clothes were wrinkled, and she had dark circles under her eyes. "Please," she said before I could even speak. "I need to talk to you." I let her in, partly out of curiosity and partly because I wanted to hear what she had to say. She sat on the edge of the couch like she was afraid to get comfortable, and for the first time since this all started, she looked genuinely broken. "I lost everything," she said quietly. "My sister kicked me out. Most of our friends won't talk to me. The few who will are only interested in gossip." I didn't respond. I just waited. "I know you'll never forgive me," she continued. "I know I destroyed our marriage and hurt you in ways I can't even begin to understand. But I need you to know that I never meant for it to go this far." "How far did you mean for it to go?" I asked. She was quiet for a long time. "I don't know. I was bored, I guess. Restless. You were always working, the kids were grown and gone, and I felt invisible. When Mark started paying attention to me, it felt good. It felt like I mattered again. So you decided to have affairs with multiple men." It wasn't supposed to be multiple men. It just happened. One thing led to another, and before I knew it, I was living this double life. I told myself it wasn't hurting anyone because you didn't know. But it was hurting me, I said. Every day, for years, you were lying to my face and making me feel like I was crazy for thinking something was wrong. She started crying then, and I felt nothing. No sympathy, no urge to comfort her, nothing. It was like watching a stranger fall apart. I know, she sobbed. I know I hurt you, and I know I can't take it back. But please, can't we try to work this out? Can't we go to counseling or something? Why? I asked. So you can tell me more about how boring and predictable I am? So you can explain how your lovers please you in ways I never could. She flinched again, just like she had that first day. I never meant those things, she said. Yes, you did. That's the problem. You meant every word. And the only reason you're here now is because your other options have dried up. She tried to argue, but we both knew I was right. If Mark's wife hadn't thrown him out, if the other men hadn't been exposed and humiliated, if she had anywhere else to go, she wouldn't be sitting in my living room begging for another chance. The divorce will be final in 60 days, I told her. After that, I never want to see you again. She left without another word, and I watched her drive away in the beat-up car she'd been borrowing from someone. Her luxury SUV had been repossessed 2 weeks ago. Apparently, she'd been spending our money on her affairs more freely than I'd realized. Update 3. It's been 6 months since my marriage ended, and I'm writing this final update because people keep asking how I'm doing. The honest answer is, better than I ever expected. The divorce was finalized 3 months ago. My ex-wife got almost nothing. Just her personal belongings and a small settlement that will last her maybe a year if she's careful. The house, the investments, the retirement accounts, everything we built together stayed with me. The prenup and her documented infidelity made it a straightforward case. She tried one last manipulation at the final hearing, breaking down in tears and begging the judge to consider that she'd been married to me for 32 years and deserved something for her sacrifice. The judge was not impressed, especially after reviewing the evidence of her affairs. Mrs. Emily, the judge said, you forfeited your right to claim sacrifice when you chose to betray your marriage vows repeatedly and systematically. The court finds that you are entitled to exactly what your prenuptial agreement stipulates, and not 1 penny more. I heard through mutual acquaintances that she's working as a receptionist at a dental office now, living in a studio apartment across town. Mark divorced his wife and moved to another state. The prominent businessman lost his family and most of his business. The engaged man is apparently working at a call center and living with his parents. As for me, I'm doing things I never had time for when I was married. I've taken up photography, started traveling, joined a hiking group. I've even been on a few dates, though I'm in no rush to get serious with anyone. The most surprising thing is how many people have reached out to support me. Colleagues, neighbors, even some of my ex-wife's former friends have told me they always suspected something was wrong, but didn't know how to bring it up. You always seemed so sad, one of them told me. Like you were trying to hold on to something that was already gone. They were right. I had been trying to hold on to something that was already gone, a marriage that existed only in my imagination, with a woman who had stopped being my partner years ago. People ask if I regret exposing everything so publicly, if I think I went too far. The answer is no. My ex-wife and her lovers made their choices in secret, hurting innocent people who deserved to know the truth. I just brought those choices into the light. Did I want revenge? Absolutely. Was I angry? Furious. But more than that, I wanted justice. I wanted the people who had been betrayed to have the information they needed to make their own decisions about their lives. My ex-wife thought I was boring and predictable. She was half right. I am predictable. When someone betrays me, I respond accordingly. When someone lies to me for years, I make sure the truth comes out. When someone thinks they can use me while living a secret life with other people, I show them exactly how wrong they are. She wanted excitement and unpredictability. She got it, just not the way she expected. The last I heard, she was telling people that I destroyed her life over a few mistakes. But they weren't mistakes, they were choices. Deliberate, calculated choices made over years of deception. I didn't destroy her life. I just stopped protecting her from the consequences of her own actions. And you know what? I sleep better now than I have in years.